Welcome back to Generational Dr. Wealth, a personal finance show for doctors. This podcast is for educational entertainment purposes only and does not constitute financial, legal, or tax advice. Always consult your own professionals.
Hello, and welcome back to the Generational Dr. Wealth Show. You are now listening to part 2 of the long-awaited Invest. If you have not listened to part 1, pause this episode now and go back to listen to that one because it was so action-packed you don't want to miss a step. On this episode, we are going to deep dive into Roth IRAs, HSAs, and how to utilize these vehicles to build generational wealth. Stay tuned and enjoy.
So this takes us to the last account on the blueprint for step number 5, invest. And this is your 401k. So remember, step number 1, we talked about getting the full match. If your employer gives 3% or 6%, make sure you put in enough funds to get the full match and then you stop. And then we move on to the account number 2, which is your HSA, if you qualify. And step number 3, your Roth IRA. And then we come back to number 4, which is finishing out the max of your 401k. And the reason we do it this way is because the other accounts technically have a little bit more benefits. With the HSA, as we talked about, is triple and quadruple tax advantage when it comes to the Roth IRA. The reason I like the IRA is because you're in full control because it's an individual retirement account and you can get all those benefits and still take your cash out in a rainy day if you absolutely needed to. Now, when it comes to the 401k, you also get benefits, but it's a lot more limited and it's usually tied to your employer. It's a good account to use, but not the best account. So after we've already maxed out the first 3 layers, we come back to the 401k and then we finish the max. So for instance, in 2026, you can put in $24,500. Now, if you put in $10,000 to get the max from your employer, you technically have about $14,500 remaining you can put in for this calendar year. So that remaining $14,500 is going to be your goal to get the rest of that maxed out. Now, let me tell you a secret. Income is usually not the issue when it comes to doctors. But turning that income potential into investing wealth is the issue. The average American invests and puts away for their future less than 10% of their income. And that's just not enough to get us to the finish line. Now, if the average American's doing that, how much do you think the average doctor's doing? You would think a lot more, but doctors tend to invest very similar to how the average American invests. But think about that. Even if we are able to invest the average amount, we can get an extraordinary outcome. And that's why I like to talk about these 4 different accounts first. Because by maxing out your HSA, maxing out your 401k, and maxing out your Roth IRA, if you're under the age of 55, that only ends up being $36,000 for the year of 2026. As we talked about previously, let's say somebody's making $300,000 a year. That's only 12% of their income that they have to put away to max out all of these accounts. That's not doing anything fancy. That's using these accounts that's right in front of you, maxing them out, and then going back to enjoying life. Now, depending on your income, if it's lower, you can invest a little bit less, or if it's higher, you're gonna have to invest a little bit more. But let's say if we just use this simple example of maxing out these accounts that are available to us, how much can this grow to? And remember, if you're getting an employer match, it might be $36,000 is the most you can put in, but your employer might be putting in $3,000, $6,000, whatever amount as part of that.
If you've been listening to the show, you probably heard us talk about the Doctor's Blueprint, the 9-step framework that helps doctors go from 6-figure debt to financial freedom. But a lot of listeners have asked the same question. How do I apply this to my own situation? That's exactly why we created the Dr. Wealth Blueprint Plan. It's a personalized financial roadmap designed specifically for doctors. We walk through your entire financial picture, your debt, insurance coverage, saving strategies, investment plan, and long-term goals, and then turn it into a clear step-by-step plan based on the doctor's blueprint. If you're interested, just text the word blueprint to 704-336-9313, and we'll send you the details and application. Again, that's blueprint to 704-336-9313 to learn more about the Dr. Wealth Blueprint Plan.
Now, if we just said that your employer can do a 5% match, and let's say you make $300,000, that means your employer is going to match $15,000. That is serious money. So you really only have to put in half at that point. So the reason I'm harping on this is because income tends not to be the issue for most doctors. The issue is turning that income potential and putting that into an investment to create wealth is the issue. But one thing I like to do is simplify things and let you out there know all you have to do is do average things to get an extraordinary outcome when you have time on your side. I'm going to get into the importance of time a little bit later, but first, let's focus on maxing out these 4 different steps for these 3 different accounts, okay? So to max out your health savings account, if you qualify, to max out your Roth IRA, and to max out your 401k, the total for all 3 of these accounts is $36,000, a little bit above $36,000, okay? So for that $36,000, what exactly does that mean? First, we need to get a good understanding of what does the average American invest? So the average American invests way less than 10%. How much do you think the average doctor invests? Usually somewhere in line of what the average American does. Now, I looked up how much does the average millionaire invest? And it's roughly 15% of their income. So if we want to be millionaires, we should do what the average millionaire does. So let's make 15% our goal. Personally, I prefer 20%, but let's use 15% as our goal. Now, if we're talking about $36,000 to max out those 3 different accounts, and we talked about the example of the doctor earlier who makes $300,000, that's not even a 15%. $36,000 equals about 12% of that doctor's income. So they're just putting away 12%. They're getting all these accounts maxed. But the sneaky part that most people don't think of is, remember, step number 1 in that was your employer match. So if your employer contributes $15,000 and you're putting in the remainder to get you to $36,000, how much are you truly putting away? Much less than that 12%. But if you stay to that 12%, and you take the difference of what's left over and put it into a traditional brokerage account, and you let your employer match whatever they're going to match, let's say put that $15,000 on top. Again, you're seeing how numbers can compound very, very, very fast. See, I don't like to throw a lot of numbers out there, but I do like to make the numbers matter. Has anybody ever heard of the phenomenon called compounding? It is commonly said that Albert Einstein said that compounding is the 8th wonder of the world, and it matters that much. Now let's do a quick case study. Would you rather me give you $1 million today, or would you rather me give you a penny? And that penny doubles every day for the next 31 days. See, most people would easily say, give me the $1 million. And then you have some contrarians that will say, give me the penny, not even understanding how it will grow. But the way compounding grows is that the penny I give you tomorrow turns into 2 pennies. That 2 pennies grows into 4 pennies. That 4 pennies, and it continues to grow and grow and grow. It doesn't just double, it grows exponentially. And the way to think about it is, how much will this grow to in 31 days? The average person is incapable of fathoming how much it grows to. So, quick spoiler alert. The answer is, I would rather have a penny a day for 31 days, because that 1 penny a day that has enough time to compound 31 times ends up growing to over $10 million in 31 days. That means that if I gave you $1 million on one hand and a penny that doubles, you will be literally taking 1/10 by taking the money today. And that's what a lot of us do with our income. We take the potential of it, but we never put it into a machine that has time to do the compounding effect necessary to help it grow to that $10 million. It's very hard to put into thoughts, how does a penny grow to $10 million in a month? But that's how compounding works. And that's why Albert Einstein, as smart as he is, just had the hardest time wrapping his mind around how can something grow so fast, so quickly. But let's use real numbers to help us understand why is this important. So a show that I like to commonly watch are called The Money Guys, and they've created what we call the wealth multiplier. This is an easy way to make crazy numbers make sense to us. And what it looks at is, how much money do you need to put away to have $1 million by the time you turn 65? So let's go through it. See, my son, his birthday's about to come up. So he falls into basically age 0 right now. For him, all he has to put away is $13 a month to have $1 million by the time he turns 65. $13, that's it. Because every dollar we put away for him is going to end up turning into $650 by the time he turns 65. That's crazy to think about. But let's make it a little more rational. Majority of us started dental school, medical school, or undergrad probably when we were in our 20s. So how much does a dollar when you're 20 years old turn into when you turn 65? I just said my son, who is about to turn 1, for every dollar we put away for him today, it turns into $650 when he turns 65. For a 20-year-old who puts away $1, it ends up turning into $88. Do you see how stark that contrast is? A dollar used to equal $650 is now a dollar equaling to $88, which is still powerful, but understand how big of a decrease that is as time continually goes on. Now, let's look into a little further. What exactly does a wealth multiplier turn into for someone who is 30 years old? That's usually about when you're going to be finishing at least medical school or vet school, not talking about residency, but usually finishing your program. For every dollar you're able to save when you're 30 years old, that multiplies by $23 by the time you turn 65. That means for every $1,000 you put away at age 30, based on the wealth multiplier, it'll grow to $23,000. Again, it's not the $650 when you were just born, and it's not the $88 when you were 20, but it still has powerful effects. And understand, time continually degrades the value of a dollar. So the sooner you're able to put it in, the better. So let's use it for context, because one of the biggest issues that doctors face is waiting too long to invest. Why do you think that? Because number one, you're going through 8 to 12 years plus of schooling. So that means that not by choice do we choose to start investing later, but a lot of our income comes a lot later than our average peer. Remember when you graduated from undergrad at 22 or 24 years old and a lot of your peers went on to work? If they were investing, that funds are going to grow a lot faster and a lot more runtime than us putting funds away at 30 or 40 years old. Because if I put away $1,000 at age 40, it's going to multiply 7 times by the time I hit 65 years old. That's crazy. At age 30, it multiplies 23x, but at age 40, it only multiplies 7x. And that's why it continues to compound that doctors have to put away more because we have less time to wait for this income to grow. So wealth multiplier aside, we have to understand that usually your income comes a lot later in your working life than the average American. So to make sure that we're able to be comparable, to make sure that we can maintain the lifestyle that we lead while we're practicing, we have to put more away today to make sure we're ready for tomorrow. I'm not sure what age you're listening to this at, but understand whatever age you're listening to this at is the youngest you'll ever be. So it's important that you start investing aggressively to make sure that you give your dollars a chance to convert from potential into economic wealth.
Hello, I'm Jonathan with Team Financials, and here at Team Financials, we make filing simple, accurate, and stress-free. Tax season does not have to be stressful, and we are here to make it as simple and stress-free as possible for you. Whether you need help with your personal tax return or your business owner looking for expert tax preparation, our experienced team is here to guide you every step of the way. We don't just file your taxes. Our slogan here at Team Financials is we educate so you can elevate, because when you understand your finances, you make stronger, smarter moves for your future. If you mention Dr. Wealth when filing with us, you will receive $75 off your personal and business tax preparations. Ready to get started? Please reach out to us at 704-412-4242 or book directly on our website at teamfinancials.com. Take care. Have a good rest of the day. Bye.
So don't give yourself those cop-outs that I'll wait to invest after I buy a house. I'll wait until after I pay off my student loans. I'll wait until after I buy my practice. Listen, you have to invest as soon as you are economically ready. Once you get from step 1 through step number 4, it's incumbent on you to start investing and get that clock of time working on your behalf. Now that I've told you the reality, let me tell you the good news. You don't have to be a great investor to get great returns. See, the market actually benefits those who have boring investments. The ones that aren't sexy to talk about explosive gains, but they are consistent and steady. There are multiple different stocks you can get into to start your investing career, but I tell people buy low cost index funds. whichever you prefer. It can be from Charles Schwab, they can be from Fidelity, they can be from my favorite, Vanguard. But make sure you get into something that does not charge you a lot to invest. Now, there are three kinds of investors that are out there. There's the investor who is hyper interested in this stuff and is going to learn, and they can do a lot of this themselves and they can manage because they love learning about this. There is the person in the middle who is neither interested nor disinterested, but they just want good gains. And then there's the last person who is not interested in this stuff at all. See, the person in the first camp is going to be usually fine without having a financial advisor if they're willing to go get the information necessary to make sure that their investments are strategic and smart over time. The individuals in the last two camps can usually often benefit from having a financial advisor, at least somebody over their shoulder to help them with the investment. For sure, the last person, the one who has no interest in investing, should definitely get a professional on their side. That person in the middle, again, depending on how incentivized you are to save those fees from a financial advisor, if you're highly incentivized to do that and you are willing to go to the camp that is highly interested, then that may be something you want to think about. But you need to understand yourself and your investment philosophies. If you know you don't enjoy doing this, get help. If you know you love it, trust me. If you went through undergrad, if you went through your doctoral program and you are a practicing clinician, you are more than intelligent enough to learn how to invest if it's something you're interested in. But like I said, you don't have to be a great investor to get great gains, because the stock market historically has returned 10 to 11% for most major indices over the last 100 years. So if you're getting 10% gains, trust me, all you have to do is put enough in, give it enough time, and it will grow. Now, of course, inflation factors into a lot of this, but at 10%, even if you take it down to 7% and you calculate how much your money grows to, because inflation tends to be about 3%, it's still a whopping sum of money over time. And that's why invest is the heart of the blueprint. And that's why I usually like to take the most time to explain this step, because once you understand the 4 different steps of invest, which your employer match, your HSA, which is your Roth IRA, and finishing the 401k match, after that, the rest is up to you. At that point, you can add more money to a traditional brokerage that has no limits. You can put money into buying a house. You can put money into whatever else that you are interested in. But when you take care of this step, invest first, and you have your economic foundation, you have learned how to turn your income into investments and your investments into wealth, you have put yourself into a strong place. You have given yourself options. And for a lot of us out there, we've never heard this much when it comes to investing. I implore you, share this episode with a friend that you're interested in learning about investing more with, because growing wealthy with a friend is much more fun than growing wealthy alone. When it comes to your money, again, no one's ever going to care as much as you. So even if you are in the camps of, I'm not necessarily interested in investment, or I hate investments, you at least need to know enough to be able to hold your financial professionals accountable. Because again, if they're managing 1,000 people's money and yours doesn't go the way it was planned, understand, you're the one that's going to bear a lot of the downside of that. But when you have the proper questions to ask your professionals, listen, you can be hands off on the investments, but you can be hands on the responsibility when it comes to your money. So these are some questions that I would personally ask my financial advisor. I would ask them, what am I invested in? Is what I'm invested in a very balanced portfolio? Is what I'm investing in low cost in comparison to other alternatives in this market? Is what I'm investing in low cost in comparison to other index funds that are in the same class as what I'm invested in? Over the last year, what were my gains or losses? Are my gains or losses equivalent to what the total market is doing? Am I underperforming or underperforming? See, these are just a few different questions for your financial advisor to know that you are on the game. Because when somebody knows that you're on your game, they know they have to treat your dollars with a little bit more respect. And if you have any questions for us to answer on the Q&A episode of Invest, and if you have any questions for the Q&A portion of Invest, you can send your questions to the information below. We would love to get your questions answered on the next episode, The Generational Dr. Wealth. See you soon. Peace.
This show is for educational and entertainment purposes only and is not intended to be financial, legal, or medical advice. We are not acting as your personal financial advisors. The strategies discussed are general in nature and may not be appropriate for your individual situations. You should always consult your own qualified financial, tax, and legal professionals before making decisions about your money. The host and guests are not responsible for any actions you take based on the information shared on this show.